Hello friend, welcome to Interpretive Roadmap Part 2. In this we're going to break down the New Covenant Spiritual Maturation Chart. When we learn about dreams and visions, we're going to come to understand that even though generations past taught us dreams happen at night and visions happen during the day, that is the furthest thing from truth. Truth is that we are shown in Holy Scripture in Acts chapter 2, verses 16 through 21, and Joel chapter 2, verses 28 through 30, beautiful treasure concerning the new covenant spiritual maturation, growth, progression. We're going to find out that there are 4 levels of new covenant growth and spiritual maturity. You see, on the day of Pentecost, when all the spiritual phenomena was happening, and they asked, what does all this mean? There was all the spiritual phenomena, people speaking in tongues, people acting drunk as if they were filled with new wine. You had this scenario of cloven tongues of fire on people's heads. You had so much spiritual, the mighty rushing wind, you name it. And when they asked, what does all this mean? The Apostle Peter, he says, that this is that which is spoken by the prophet Joel. Well, what is he doing? He's pointing to the prophecy in Joel chapter 2, verses 28 through 30, the prophecy of which God will pour out upon all flesh in the last days of his Spirit. And of his Spirit that he pours out upon all flesh, your sons and daughters shall prophesy. Your young men shall see visions, your old men shall dream dreams. And upon my servants in those days will I also pour out upon of my Spirit, and they shall also prophesy. Look at this graph here. Be signs and wonders in heaven and earth, and blood, and pillars of smoke and fire, and the sun will be darkened, and the moon turned into blood, all before the great and notable day of the Lord. Whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. So notice here, sons and daughters, the bottom. Your sons and daughters, they shall prophesy. Your young men shall see visions. Your old men shall dream dreams. And upon my servants, notice the change of ownership. Upon my servants, they shall also prophesy. This is the birth of the church age. Most will call this the beginning point of the dispensation of grace. Now continue to look at this next part of this graph. Your sons and daughters shall prophesy. You see, they are birthed into the kingdom. They shall prophesy. This is 1 Corinthians 14, verse 31. All of you can prophesy so that all of you can be comforted. And Revelation 19:10, which says this, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus. Your young men shall see visions. Well, according to Numbers chapter 12, verse 6 through 8, when God is communicating to a prophetic person, he makes himself known through visions, but he speaks to them in dreams. What does that mean? That means that visions are more literal in interpretation because God makes himself known. There's nothing to figure out. Unveiled, undisguised, plain, easy to interpret. And then as you get a little bit older in the Lord, you begin to learn his ways, and you begin to understand his parabolic language through dream life. Not only what happens in the night season, but also in understanding the parabolic communication of God. You see there in Numbers chapter 12, he says, when I communicate to a prophetic person, I speak through dreams. Well, Matthew 13:34, Jesus being God in the flesh, he speaks nothing without a parable. So when God is speaking, there's parabolic language to interpret. When he makes himself known, it's literal, like, no, this is what it is. Literally like this. He literally means that when he's talking to you. But notice the change of ownership. But upon my servants, they shall also prophesy. This is not 1 Corinthians 14:31. It can include that. But this is also Ephesians 4:11 through 13 level of prophecy. My servants, you see, all of you can prophesy. However, some of you will become prophets. This is the setting apart of the fivefold ministry, the office of the prophet, the calling of the prophetic order to which you will then be commissioned as a my servant, as a servant of the Lord into the earth realm for his assignment and his purposes to and through you. 1 Corinthians 14:31, all of you can prophesy so that all of you can be comforted. Ephesians chapter 4, 11 through 13, only some will become prophets. All of you can prophesy, but only some will become prophets. Friend, not everybody who prophesies is a prophet. Maybe you can move greatly. How about this? Have you ever met anybody that was amazing at the word of knowledge, but they failed miserably at accurately predicting the future? They're just prophetic. They're not a prophet. Because once you've climbed the ranks and you reached up to that level, you've learned how to work out all the wrong interpretations. You're still on a journey. You see, all of us can prophesy. We're all on a journey, and sometimes we make it, sometimes we miss it. What sets this apart from Old Testament prophecy is Old Testament prophecy is sovereign. New Covenant prophecy is potential. Just because someone wants you to have babies or move somewhere else doesn't mean you need to go and do what some other prophetic person says. We'll teach more on how to handle a prophetic word in another session. But for this case here, on the spiritual maturation growth chart, you've got all of the new covenant wrapped up in just a few verses. How amazing is that? Friend, what causes the climb of the chart is this: intimacy with Jesus. You see in Psalm 103 verse 7, Israel knew his acts, but Moses knew his ways. We see there in Numbers 12, communication of visions and dreams, but upon my servant Moses. What set the difference? Moses knew the ways of God. He learned the nature and the mind of God through spending time with him. A lot of people don't want to pay the price for intimacy, but my friend, intimacy is what will set you apart. Keep your relationship with the Lord intact, and he'll take you places eye hasn't seen nor ear has heard. Keep intimacy first place.